Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hardcore Human Design Podcast. I am Miko, and on the other side of the world, we have Celestina.
Hey, guys.
Today, we're going to be talking about the ego and especially focusing on selfishness and self-worth. What does that actually mean? Why do we have so many challenges with this in our modern day life, but also probably a lot of challenges back in the day? And today we're going to look at how the ego has influenced these viewpoints in ourselves and in others. And bear in mind, we are two ego authorities. So I am an ego projector and Celestina is an ego manifester. So we are going to take on these perspectives because that's what we know and the challenges that we personally faced in stepping into these authorities and really living those inner authorities. So we got very, very helpful constructive criticism the other day, and we would love to invite you guys to also share questions that you may have throughout the episode so we can answer them. So we would like to, I didn't actually discuss that with you yet.
I'm here for it. Hit me.
But I think a great way, which was recommended to us, was that questions should be asked to us and we can just answer them at the beginning of every episode. Ooh. So yeah, to kind of have a bit more of an interaction. And the other thing that we received as constructive criticism was that we should point you guys to previous episodes where we have already covered the basics, because human design can be very confusing. It can be a lot, especially how we're covering it in certain times that are really deep dives into the human design charts.
If it's any consolation, guys, we have to do a metric shit ton of research to bring the information to you as well. So it's a deep dive for us almost every time too. Just throwing that out there.
Exactly. Yes, because even if we know a lot about human design, we need to refresh it as well every time because there's just so much metric poop ton, as you said. So yeah, we totally understand that this can be overwhelming and a lot of information. So if you are new to human design, do check out our episodes 2 to 5. So we have episode 2, the centers, episode 3, the inner authorities, episode 4, the 5 types in human design, and episode 5, the profiles and the lines. If you would just like to understand a bit more of the foundational human design aspects. And as we are covering the ego today in part, so we're going to talk about the defined ego, the undefined ego, and how differently we navigate the world and we encounter the world and things that we should or shouldn't do. And should is going to be a big topic here as well. So if you would like to know even more about the inner authority, the ego inner authority, then do check out our episode 59, where we talk about how you as an inner authority, ego inner authority, get to navigate life in the way that is most aligned with who you are. So making decisions according to your ego inner authority. Would you like to continue?
Yeah, so a quick brief intro to the ego authority. If you guys need more info on any and everything ego authority wise, we kind of broke that down back in episode 59. So give that a listen if before or after this. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. This is just a very different topic, but we go into more detail in episode 59 as well. So the ego center in human design is one of the motors. It is the center of willpower. It is what keeps Miko and I going on the daily basis. And it's also a center for material resources, as in bringing things into the material plane, as well as kind of just defining one's self-worth. And I think the ego gets kind of a bad rap. The ego is in the name, right? Of being so egoistic. I feel like it's such a bad rap. But today we're going to explore that a bit more and peel back the layers as to why that's not the case, especially for those with the ego authority. So yes, we are going to be challenging some pretty intense societal conditioning around the word ego and around selfishness versus selflessness, and diving way deeper into all of that. But first, I want to ask you, Miko, have you ever had a memory of being called selfish by someone potentially in your family or externally? And if so, how did that shape your behavior, I guess, or your response to it?
So I find this question really interesting because I feel like I have not been called selfish a lot, and at least not in my early life, I would say. So after really stepping into the ego authority, I feel like you can be perceived as more selfish more often. And I feel like when I wasn't really stepping into it, I was seen as selfless, which I may still be seen in some areas, but I have recently received the comment that I'm being selfish in my decision, and I found that really interesting. It has nothing, it has less to do with me, it has more to do with the person that said that. But it is really a decision that I'm contemplating, and it's not even a decision that I have made already. So it's still out there. But that alone was perceived as me being selfish because of certain things surrounding that decision. And as I said, I don't really feel like I was really that selfish, and we're going to get to the subject and we're going to dive deeper into it, what that even means, selfish and selfless, which I just find a very interesting topic considering all the social constructs and social beliefs around the subject. When was it for you? Have you experienced it? Is there a first memory you had around this subject, or a recent one?
No, like a first memory, dude. I was a kid. I was maybe no more than like 5 or 6. And my grandma on my mom's side said, Chelly, stop being selfish. I don't even remember what I was doing. Or like, you're so selfish. And I feel like that really, really transformed me in like putting others before myself. And I still do it. So I think, in little kid world, like that was a significant moment in my life. And I think in hindsight, that's a lot of the conditioning, or I guess unconditioning, that I've had to do around that. And I wonder if that comment hadn't been said, if I would have been able to feel into heart pulls early on rather than not, you know what I mean? Rather than just dissociating from my body. Think the lesson learned from that for adults is be very mindful about what you say to your kiddos. Like if you're aware of their design, be very mindful about what you say to your kiddos. Because I think that there were also other times in my life where I felt like I needed to be less loud, be less, you know what I mean? And I'm loud because I'm a New Yorker and I'm Italian, I guess, but also that's just who I am.
And a manifester.
Yeah. So even like watching little kid videos of myself, like, dude, 1-year-old me had a big personality. I can't even imagine. My poor parents. But yeah, so I think that one comment affected me. And I don't think I recognized that in the moment, but like years later, like looking back on that, I think that heavily affected me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And especially it stopped you from doing things that you wanted to do, and stopped you from taking action or to really live out your manifesterness as well. So once your heart was into something, your natural way should have been, hey, I'm going to do that. I'm informing you. I'm going to grab my bicycle and I'm just going to ride down the street, for example. And it's hard to then be called selfish or, I can imagine as a child, it's not fun. It's not fun as an adult either.
Whole different experiences though. It's interesting like seeing how that affected me not knowing my design and how you can process it differently knowing your design.
Well, as a kid or a teenager, I didn't know my design, and my parents always allowed me to still follow my heart, which is something that I really, really appreciate, that they intuitively were able to do that, where most of the decisions that I took were really because my heart was or wasn't in something. Pretty much all the decisions. From that perspective, I don't feel like I was held back. I felt like I was really free in taking the decisions that felt right, and because this was something that I felt was best for me. Then as well, additionally to that, it was a bit challenging to decipher, okay, what is really best for me? So it is one thing to be like, I want to do that, and another one of what is best for me.
I would say my parents were like similar to yours, right? Like my parents weren't the problem. It was an older generation with a different mindset that conditioned me in like a kind of shitty way. Yeah, so interesting. All right, well, that was a good therapy sesh, hey?
So that was ego inner authority perspective. Now let's take a bit of a look at the undefined ego, because there is also a lot of conditioning happening there. So that's as well a good point to note that even if you are defined in certain areas, you can still be conditioned. And when you're undefined in certain areas, it can sometimes influence you more, but it doesn't mean that a defined center or a defined gate is not conditionable. It still can be conditioned. So from an undefined perspective, we have often individuals that may not feel worthy, that feel like they need to prove themselves, that feel like they need to use their willpower to achieve things, and that also feel like they can give promises when in fact they actually shouldn't make promises. And I find that as well a very interesting social conditioning, because we are taught so many times where there's a will, there's a way, when you're making a promise, you have to keep it. And bear in mind, this is 70% of the population that shouldn't make promises. 70% of the population doesn't have a defined ego and doesn't have consistent willpower. And we're just assuming or expecting people to have the willpower to complete a project, to have the willpower to wake up every morning at 6 a.m. and do their whole routine, to have the willpower to commit to someone and stick with it. These are all things that are not a consistent element in 70% of the population. So from a defined perspective, have you ever said yes to something only to realize that your heart wasn't in it? And how did that impact you? What was the outcome? How did that impact you?
Oof. Yeah, dude. I committed to myself, and halfway through, I was like, bro, what am I even doing? So 2 years ago, I hosted in-person events like for dietitians in the US. And I was just so on a high from like 2 events that I had held before that went really well. So I was like, yeah, I can host 23 events.
I remember that. Oh my God, at the end, you were so done.
Dude. So what's funny is that my business buddy, who I had been meeting with every week since like 2018, he was like, are you sure you want to commit to this many? He's like, I know you. Like, you get really stoked on something and then you just go like balls to the walls crazy about it. I'm like, yeah, man, let's do this. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. Dude, I added cities. It was insane. So I ended up with 23 events that I had committed to. And the first one went really well. The second one was okay. And then the next handful of them, I could not get people to attend. And as a manifester, not just as an ego manifester, as a manifester, the amount of rejection that I had to go through just tore me down. And all I had was willpower to get me through. The events that I had people on the other side, like people at the actual location helping me, were so much easier. And that also reminded me as to why I love collaboration. Yeah, dude, midway through this, and mind you, it was like a 6 or 7 month like event calendar. Midway through, I was just done. But I committed to it. I made a promise to my people. I made a promise to the people who paid money to sponsor it, like the sponsors. And I had to, right? Like my heart said that I committed to this and I could not pull out of it. But I can tell you, as soon as the last event happened, which was really good, I think I had like 10 people at the last event. It was solid. As soon as that happened, I went back to the hotel room and I crashed for 3 days. And like I had a trip like planned with my parents for the next couple of days. And I was like, I cannot. You guys can go explore. I cannot. It was intense. So that was a very long story for, yeah, I overcommitted, but I had to deliver. I don't know any other way though, dude.
Well, the only other way is to recognize the amount of energy that we have and to build enough spaces in between. Also, hosting retreats, for example, it would be impossible for us to go from one retreat to the next, to the next, to the next without a pause in the middle, because we also felt that when we were hosting the retreat at Lake Como. Oh, yeah. After that, we just needed a week, I think, or maybe a week and a half to just be like, okay, we're done peopling.
Dude, we need literally to rest. Ended and I just broke down crying. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember.
It was intense.
Yeah, it was a lot. And it's when you're hosting retreats, it's 24 hours on the clock. Yes, you're sleeping in those 24 hours, but as soon as you wake up, you're okay, what needs to be done next? everything, planning everything and being present and being the best version of yourself at any moment, it takes a lot out of you. So the only thing to do is to be mindful as an ego authority, but also someone that has, well, if you only have the ego center as a motor center, then you are an ego authority. But no, actually, you could also be a splenic inner authority. But apart from that, if the ego is defined, that's the only motor. And if that's the only motor that you have, you need to be really mindful of your rest phases in between. The best thing to do is to recognize that, to set spaces where you can rest and recuperate, and to also not overdo it, because I completely relate to what you're saying regarding when you're stoked, you're all in and you want to do it and you have such huge visions. But that is the emotions that are taking over. And maybe it's also a transit that is taking place in that moment, or you're amplifying someone else's emotions and you're riding the wave, and only to realize that, I can't actually hold up all of these commitments that I made. So I think in that it would be also good to not jump the gun when it's such long-term decisions or things that are going to impact you for such a long time. Even if you are an ego inner authority, even if you're a splenic authority and you have the ego defined, a splenic inner authority can also make a decision in the moment. And then when the event is happening, they can make a completely different decision, and that is still correct for them. So it's just something to bear in mind. Yes, you can make decisions from your inner authority that feel like a hard pull, but it may be a momentary hard pull that you can only sustain for a few months, not half a year, for example. Or even longer.
I think I have the hard part of then you feel wishy-washy, or then you seem wishy-washy, and then that feels gross. Right?
Yeah, because when we're committing, when we're making a promise, this is horrible. We can't let it go. And this is something that Travis has been pointing that out over and over again with me. He's like, okay, when you do something, you can't let it go. And because I was just constructing this table, I got this table from IKEA. What happened was I drove to IKEA. I drove back from IKEA. I had a smaller table with me. I placed that in the room and I was like, no, this is too small. I need a bigger table. I love space. I love to just have all my things around me on a big table. So I went back to IKEA on the same day. It's an hour away, okay? So 1 hour there, 1 hour back, 1 hour there, 1 hour back. I came back with my new table at, it could have been 9:30, 10.
That's really late for her, just to give you guys some perspective. That is very late.
Exactly, because I go to sleep at 10 normally. 9:30, 10, that's my bedtime. So I came back and I started to construct this table because I really wanted the table. And I really wanted to show it to Travis. And at some point he said, you should go to bed. And I said, no, I need to finish this table. I want to show you what it looks like. Yeah, I have a problem. I know, but it's a commitment.
I feel you do, but I would do the same thing. I think it's a hard thing. And it looks crazy to people on the outside, but it doesn't feel crazy, if that makes sense. It doesn't.
It doesn't, but I still feel like we need to know our limits. We need to be like, hey, okay, maybe we don't need to construct the table at 10 p.m. at night when that's your normal sleep time. Maybe it can wait.
But tomorrow you is going to be so grateful that last night you put the table there when you have your morning coffee.
Exactly. She was having breakfast, looking at the harbor and just enjoying it. Yeah, it was.
You can see either side of the coin, guys. Did you have any stories that you wanted to share about your heart not being in it?
I think because I always followed it, and there was one situation where I didn't follow it. And that was when I used my mind to make a rational decision. And that was when I had to decide what I wanted to study. So after doing my A-levels, after school in England, you can choose different kinds of subjects for your high school. Is that college? No, high school?
High school, but everywhere else in the world is called college, so yeah.
No, like the last part, like the last 2 years of school.
They're not split up in America. Those are just high school.
Okay, so last 2 years of school.
Junior and senior year, guys.
See, I knew there was one.
Yeah, but it's not like a different school. It's just those are the...
No, but
Continue.
you call it some...
Yeah,
you
junior
call
and
it
senior
in a-
year.
Yeah. Okay, so junior and senior year.
Upperclassmen.
In England, you have the A levels, which is junior and senior year. So in England, you can choose which subjects you want to take. You don't have to take all kinds of different subjects, like in a German school, where you have to have chemistry and physics and maths and English and blah, blah, and history and whatever. So yeah, you have to have everything in German's classes. All you can do is you can maybe choose, instead of having 3 sciences, you get to go down to 2 sciences. Wild.
So German. So German.
So in England, you can choose 3 to 5 subjects, which is pretty cool. So I chose photography, I chose psychology, I chose German GCSE, I chose English literature, and I chose, that's it, I think. I had psychology and I thought, okay, yeah, that looks like a subject that I should maybe consider taking, because I had no idea what I wanted to do after high school. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to go into the photography direction? Am I going to go into the psychology direction? Am I going to go into the business direction? I don't know. So I felt, okay, psychology is something that you need in every field, no matter what you do. And I used my rational mind to tell myself, yeah, I can't make money with photography. I'm not good enough at photography. And so I'm not going to be one of the 1% photographers that are going to make it. So I said, okay, I'm going to study psychology. And when I went to university in Bristol and studied psychology, I was miserable. Because psychology is, to me, it was fascinating. I wanted to learn about the human psyche. I wanted to know everything about why people decide to make certain decisions and what was the reason behind it. Was it really because you are raised a certain way, or is it genetics? It's the usual question that psychologists are asking themselves up to this day. They still don't have an answer to it. And that is what frustrated me, because there were more questions than there were answers. And then when you study it in university, you start with statistics. And I hated statistics. I hated maths. I hated anything that had anything to do with maths. I wanted to know the mind, the thoughts, the ideas, and not maths. And so after a year of university and being sick for 6 months of that year, I decided... I had also studied criminology and psychology, so I already knew from the get-go, hey, I can't go psychology all the way. I need to add something to it, because I got bored with psychology in school, but I still chose it as a logical pathway. But then I said, okay, if I have to study psychology, I might as well link it to something. So I chose criminology. And when I then thought, hey, maybe I can just move to criminology and drop psychology, but they didn't let me do that. So I would have had to start all over again. And that's the moment I decided, because throughout this year, I noticed how much I missed photography. And then I decided, okay, you know what? I'm dropping everything. I'm going to Florence and I'm going to learn from certain photographers. And then I started to go to photography school. And that filled me so much. So for me, yes, psychology was one of the decisions that I made. One of the few decisions that I made with my mind, my logical approach to life. Long story long.
Damn. Oh, cool. Learning lessons though, right? I feel like nothing in life is a bad decision. It's just a learning lesson, especially when you're still in your 3-line life.
Absolutely. And everything that I've studied, everything that I've done, even if it wasn't necessarily the right decision, it's helped me so much to grow, to evolve. And it's helping me even today to do what I do.
Cultural conditioning of the ego. I don't know if this is actually lighter and brighter, but think of how society appreciates and values this homogenized view of oneself, right? Basing oneself on achievement and merit and what can we do, what can we achieve, rather than being just enough for oneself and focusing on self-love instead of those external factors of merit. That's not societally what we're seeing as, success, if you will. And there's so much pressure for those 70% of individuals with the open or undefined egos. Pressure to be enough, to be more than themselves. And that leads to a disgusting amount of people pleasing as well as burnout, which is for the long term. Like if you're looking at this from like not just a human design perspective and not just like a not following strategy and authority perspective, but like, dude, if you're constantly in a state of burnout, if you're constantly in a state of like your adrenaline being on the go all the way up, your cortisol being up, that's not healthy, like for your physical body. And that is like, in theory, not even in theory, in like reality, what leads to disease or dis-ease, if you will. Yeah. So not having this external conditioning can really do a number on your body badly. So please give that a thought when you are thinking about all of the areas that you're conditioned in within your body, in addition to your ego center. Like I know we're focusing on the heart today, but actually think about that. Do your people-pleasing tendencies and like desire to be people-pleasing affect you more than you think, right? Like, are you going above and beyond to help someone and putting yourself down in the process? That's significant if that's the case. So the difference kind of between the intrinsic and the difference between the intrinsic and extrinsic value is the ego is knowing about your self-worth inherently and understanding your self-worth inherently. What do you contribute? What do you bring? Who are you in the context of whatever it is? Yeah, so when it comes to the undefined ego, as I said, 70% of the population has an undefined ego. And this external homogenization of it all creates the pressure to prove, to be people-pleasing, and to feel like they need to have worthiness from external sources. Anything you want to add to that, Miko?
Yes, so what I have noticed with the undefined ego is that a lot of times you take on more that you bite off more than you can chew. And you not only try to prove yourself, but you also try to make commitments that are just too many. So instead of taking on more and more and more and more onto your plate, which drains you, which really takes away from the time that you should be also spending on yourself, or you could be spending on yourself. And that is an important part of all of this. You need to fill your own cup. And we're going to be talking about that more further down this podcast episode. But if you continuously give promises or you're continuously agreeing to help others in some way, shape, or form that doesn't resonate with what you actually want to do, you're causing more challenges than you're doing good. Because when you're not taking care of yourself and when you're not filling your own cup, you become more reactive, you become less patient, you become a lesser version of what you could actually be. So this is a really, really strong recommendation from us, that especially if you have an undefined ego, but also if your ego is defined, just be mindful which promises you give, what things you agree to, because if you have a defined ego, you're really going to try to do everything you can to keep that promise. And with an undefined ego, you can actually impact your physical heart as well, because you're straining it, you're draining it from the life force energy that is within you, and you're running on a fuel tank that is actually empty. You don't have that kind of energy. And I think that's a good way to look at it, as when you're looking at the motor centers, to look at different kinds of fuel tanks and the way that they are able to provide you with energy. And depending on which motor center you have or which one you don't have, you need to be mindful that if you don't have any motor centers, you're borrowing these fuel tanks from other people, but you have to give it back. And you can't continuously run on other people's energies. When you have a specific motor center defined, you also need to consider what kind of energy it gives to you. Because the ego has a certain amount of energy, it has a certain amount of fuel in the tank, but when it runs out, it's going to need time before it fills up again. And if you don't have the ego defined, just bear in mind that if you make one promise after another, after another, after another, you're going to burn out, as Celestina mentioned earlier.
And from that defined ego perspective, to kind of just round this out, we're here to show love to ourselves first as a defined ego, and not just an ego authority, but having a defined ego. And We have to show that self-love to ourselves first and put ourselves first in order to be able to help others. So please keep that in mind, guys. This is like, actually, if your cup isn't full first, or if your oxygen mask isn't on first, you're not going to be able to help those around you, and you're not going to be able to reach that fullest potential, you know? So please keep that in mind. Also, as far as the fuel tank goes, it depends on how burnt out you are or how far depleted or beyond empty you've taken your fuel tank as to how long it's going to take to replenish said fuel tank. There have been times I've bounced back from burnout in like 2 or 3 weeks because it wasn't that bad. This last year had me down and out for like a month. Probably like just I'm at a month now, and only in the last week and a half have I been able to do any kind of physical activity beyond walking my dog, which is insane. So take that into account, guys. So an interesting way to kind of assess this and start deconditioning that ego over the next couple of days. This can be in a notes app on your phone. Doesn't have to be super, super formal, but if you like to journal, this can also be kind of something that you're doing throughout the day. Every time you find yourself overriding a desire, note what voice did that and what belief it was protecting. Was it yourself? Was it someone in your life who has conditioned you in that way, saying it in your head? Try and note where that was coming from and where that belief came from. Oh, I really want to do this, but oh no, I can't. Like, was that grandma saying you're not good enough? Or was that Joe Schmo down the street being like, what are you doing, you schmuck? You know, so really try and denote who that voice is saying it and why there's hesitation about following through with whatever that may be, that internal desire. So give that a shot, guys.
Yeah, and it could also be even, are you really aligned with your inner authority? Because if you're an emotional being, you could be riding your wave and just observing whether your decision on certain subjects would change depending on where you are in your wave, if you're up or if you're down. It's also a really good practice to just, deciphering what your decision-making process really is, whether it is conditioned by someone or whether it's just that you need a bit more time to make that decision, or whether it is you're taking too much time, if you're splenic inner authority, for example, taking too much time to make a decision and letting your head, your mind come in and try to give you 50,000 reasons why that is a good or a bad decision. Because the spleen acts in the moment. It's not about making a decision by using your mind. So yeah, I feel like this is a really good practice for everyone with or without defined ego, just to really understand where are my decisions coming from and why am I making them. So what that naturally leads to is the thought of being selfish, because there is a video that I keep referring back to when I talk about this in Opportunity, which is from Jada Pinkett Smith and her daughter Willow Smith. They sit at the red table and they have a conversation about selfishness, because Jada had been called selfish by certain parents. And she was explaining to Willow how it's not selfish to take care of yourself in the morning, for example, to fill your cup with self-care practices. That is how you stay balanced. That is how you have enough to give. And it doesn't have to be in the morning, but she was just referring to it in the morning. It can be at any point in time during the day when you feel like you have a little bit of space. How can you fill your cup from the inside out, not from the outside in? There are certain things that you can also do from the outside in, such as taking a nice bubble bath or buying yourself flowers if that's something you like. But a lot of
sip of coffee.
Taking that first sip of good coffee. Yeah, so doing things like this, being present in the moment, being mindful is also a very good way to savor these external things that you're taking in, but also doing your internal work. And that is practices such as meditation or yoga or journaling. Things like this can really help you a lot in finding clarity within yourself and regaining balance, regaining your internal balance. And it helps you fill that tank that we were talking about. Whether you have motor centers or not defined in your chart, filling up your self-love tank is crucial for you to be able to give back, to hand out that additional love that is overflowing. You shouldn't give from an empty tank, because then you're becoming reactive, then you're becoming stressed out, then you're going to feel like you're not being appreciated for what it is you're doing, because you're already giving from emptiness. You're not giving from overflow. And that is just, wow, I can't state this often enough, how important self-care and self-love is. Sorry.
I think that's the essence of the ego itself, right? It is referred to as the ego, and yes, like the heart center, but it's the self-love center, the center where you put you first. And yeah, the question that comes with it is asking yourself, what do I want? And that societally comes across as selfish. But dude, if you're putting yourself first, especially with the defined ego, man, you're going to just be a more well-balanced, happier person. Like you were saying, you fill your cup first and you'll have all the coffee to give all the people.
I feel like you need a coffee.
It's too late. It's 6 o'clock, man. If I have one now, I won't sleep. I'd love a coffee though. I think this rounds out to, from an ego authority perspective, you do have to be selfish. And it's kind of a weird thing to say. We're going to go through some reframes of that in just a sec. But mechanically, the ego authority is here to put themselves first in a way that, yes, benefits them, but then also when they're benefiting themselves, they can benefit other people as well. And don't think of this as like the psychological quote unquote selfishness, right? This is existential integrity, if you will, where, like we said earlier, right? If a broken promise is going to be more damaging than being perceived as selfish to someone. So we're putting ourselves first as an ego authority, but it really is for the benefit and the good of others, right? Like take Miko's table example. She wanted to do it so she could show Travis a picture of it, right? If it was just for you, you might still have done it. Let's be real. You might have done it for tomorrow. But I think when I make selfish, quote unquote, decisions, I usually have someone else in mind as well. Like, yes, it's primarily for me, but I think it's also really going to benefit someone else as well. And they're going to see the beauty in it, or they're going to see, I don't know, something successful in it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's also a good point to make, because in our society, when we talk about the ego, the ego, it is often shown in a negative light. But there is a healthy ego and there is an unhealthy ego. And being egoistic in an unhealthy way, that's not what this is about. You're totally right. It really is about covering your bases, or having your basic needs met. That is super, super, super important. And also, I have to say that every time I make a decision that really truly is best for me, it turns out right. Every time I have a live session or we're recording a podcast, and I do as much as I can to prepare. And if I can't prepare anymore, if I'm really exhausted and I decide, hey, I'm done, I need to now rest, and then we step onto recording or I step onto the live session, it always turns out that what I've covered is more than enough. Often it's even, I've covered so much more and I still feel like I didn't cover enough before I step onto the podcast, but I just make the decision, hey, I can't go any further, so that's what it's going to be. And often it's more, that I covered more than I thought I would need, but it's always enough. And making these decisions as well of, for example, I feel I committed to meeting up with someone, but then I cancel that meeting for some reason. Most often, I think nearly always since I've stepped into human design, it's always been thank you for canceling because I also didn't feel like it, or something came up or something. It's always like this. So it's a blessing to really step into what is right for you. And you're not only doing yourself a favor, but you're doing everyone else a favor too.
So a little bit of reframe of verbiage, because as you guys know, human design verbiage can be pretty harsh. And just verbiage in general can be pretty harsh. So quick reframe of some verbiage of selfish in human design terms. So the conventional view of selfishness is bad. We've kind of stated that already. But if we're reframing this from an ego-centered truth perspective, let's consider selfishness as clarity. And I feel like that just feels so much better than putting a negative connotation on it. If we're also looking at selfishness from a negative connotation perspective, it could be virtuous. Whereas from the ego-centered truth perspective, untrue sacrifice can be distortion. From a conventional perspective, one must prove their worth. And from an ego-centered truth perspective, consider it as value is innate when that decision is correct or it's ego-led.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy ego way.
Give to be loved. Oh yeah, there we go. So from a conventional point of view, giving something or giving more to feel loved, to feel that self-worth, versus from an ego-centered perspective where love follows if you are following that honest alignment and you're being true to yourself. And the conventional...
That we need to, I feel
highlight?
like this needs to be underlined and exclamation marks and everything. Yes, because, my God, this is something, again, going back to selfish and selflessness. It leads to when you're following your inner authority and when you're following your strategy. I don't know why I keep saying it this way around, but it's actually the other way around. When you're following your strategy and then you're following your inner authority. You are aligning with who you are inside, and you are aligning with what is really right for you. There are going to be people that will fall away. You're going to lose people, the people that are not right for you, the people that are not there for the right reasons, the people that don't truly love the real version of you. And then you're going to attract the right people as well. So yes, love follows honest alignment. That means love follows when you become more and more and more your true and authentic self. Very important one.
Preach. And then last but not least, the conventional view of selfishness or the anti-selfishness is putting others first. Whereas from an ego-centered truth perspective, putting yourself first so that others can benefit from your example. That feels so much better. It feels so much better. And I guess a real life example of this is like, I had to do this when I left my job. Like, it was stay in it for other people, which I had done for so long. And it wasn't staying in it for the owners. It wasn't staying in it for the business. It was staying in it for the beautiful team that I'd created, which is also really hard because that's my only channel. So like, that's really hard. And that was like major inner conflict. But man, I'm a better human now than I was a month ago, just because I have so much more capacity to put myself first, to be the best self, rather than functioning at, I can't even say half capacity, dude. It was like 10 to 25% capacity. So things can change if you put yourself first as an ego authority. So a big thing for people as a whole is shoulding on themselves. And another big thing for those who have an ego authority can be mitigating the I wants statements, because that can feel selfish. So the shoulds and the I wants are what's up next.
So as an ego in our authority, ask yourself, what is it that you truly want? And the truly is very important here, because you may just say, I want XYZ, but is it truly something that will fill you? I think that's a great way to put it, instead of just, I want that designer bag. Is that really something that is going to fill you? Not that there's anything wrong with people wanting designer bags, but yeah, it's
something that you can fill.
Hey. Work around here. So yeah, is it going to fill you? Is your decision going to fill you? And in the defined but also undefined ego, there are often times where you say, I should do this, and really think about whether it is really something you should be doing or not. Because as a defined ego, as mentioned, we tend to make promises, and we make promises and we really want to keep them. As an undefined ego, you shouldn't make promises in the first place. And both of these instances, you shouldn't should on yourself. So really, you shouldn't should on yourself. Because when you should be doing something, this is an external conditioning. This is something that you were told that you should be doing because of XYZ. It is not something that is coming from inside of you. It's not something that is going to fill you. There are very, very, very few cases where I would say, okay, you should do that because of some reason or another. I can't really think of one right now, but one that is often thrown out there, and I don't think that's a good reason, is family. because you've been invited to a family event and it's just the socially accepted thing that you show up there. I know this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, especially if you're very tribal in your chart. You're going to often should, in these instances, you should go to that family event because otherwise this person or that person is going to feel offended. When I stopped doing that, I felt an immense relief. And again, it's usually still the right decision, but you need to learn how to decipher your strategy and how to work your strategy properly and how to decipher your inner authority. Because until you haven't figured that out, it's still going to be difficult for you to make the right decisions from an intuitive impulse instead of making the decision from your mind because it's culturally or societally the way that you should be doing something. So maybe a great exercise to do for this whole episode would be to sit down and figure out where are you shooting on yourself? Where are you making decisions because of others? And we kind of talked about this in the earlier prompt, but it still maybe resonates better with you when you're coming from the I want or I should perspective. And look at the things that truly fill you and look at the things that you decide because of other people, because of your culture, because of your society, because you think that you should be doing this.
And to give you guys just a little bit of insight into, I guess, kind of what I've been experiencing this past month. I haven't had heart pulls this whole year, like all of 2024, because I was in a job that in
2025?
No. 2024, I didn't have heart pulls that entire year. I had a heart pull.
Look at what you said this year.
Okay, let me rephrase this. Not calendar year, like this date to last date year. So the last time I can remember having a significant heart pull was for the job, like when I got the job that I just left. And throughout that entire job, I had no heart pulls. I was very disconnected from my body. And even now, still, like a month later, just so that you guys know, I have not had a significant heart pull towards anything. My mind is telling me that I need to do something because I'm bored. It's a very weird place to be. And like, even though I want to restart the business that I started like 2 years ago, Luna's Bowl, like for my dog, I haven't had a heart pull towards that yet. Like a genuine heart pull. So this is not something that can be rushed. You'll feel it when you feel it. And I've found that when I need a bit more clarity and I can't connect to my body in this way, that using external tools like oracle cards or pendulums can be really helpful, just to help you gain a little bit more clarity if you're not feeling inside for any reason. Whether you've dissociated for too long or it's just not something that you're super, super clear on. Give yourself some space and don't rush it. Don't push it. Because if you're rushing it and pushing it, it's probably not for you if that's the case, right? Like you'll feel it when you feel it. So just give that a good noodle. Look at your charts, check out your body graph, check out your ego centers. We can go so much deeper into this, but today we've just scratched the surface with selfishness, selflessness, defined and undefined egos. And we'd love to hear from you, right? Like, what did you garner from this episode? Are there any questions? Did you need more clarity on something? Do you have questions specifically about your chart? Because if that's the case, hit up Miko for a session where she can go deeper into your human design with you to explore these more mystical areas. It's not really that mystical. I just thought I'd use some fun words. And she can use her intuition and kind of help you define. She can use her intuition and help you assess where you need to maybe dive deeper, where you maybe need to do some deconditioning. And that is all available through opportunity.life. Not .com, because who needs .coms anymore? Boom.
Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Celestina. Always a pleasure.
Toodly doodles, guys. Right back at you, Miko. Ciao.
Bye. Hardcore, the Human Design Podcast. Bloopers.
Center for Material Resources. It's also